firstly, Manchester United's top four hopes. They're completely gone as per the manager post-match against the Gunners. Because I'm starting to view this season as a lowest nada since Sir Alex Ferguson left. I mean, they're on course to potentially have their lowest points tally. And this coming after a summer in which they spent big. Champions League, World Cup winner Rafael Varane comes back. Cristiano Ronaldo, Jadon Sancho, who they spent, 2 years trying to change. And then that game against the Gunners, I thought maybe there'll be motivation. What with Erik ten Hag finally being confirmed. Bless you. And
sorry, thank you.
No worries. Did they look better against Arsenal? I think so, but still, it was a result which didn't go their way.
Yeah, I think they showed some attacking threat, and Arsenal's defensive issues played into that, I think. But yeah, top four for me has been gone for them probably for a little while, just because if you look back, they always had a difficult run in. They had trips to Arsenal, trips to Anfield in the space of a week that did not go well for them. And I always looked at that and thought that's going to be tricky. Now they face Chelsea. That's a difficult fixture in its own right. Even coming up, they've got things like a trip to Palace, I think, on the final weekend, which I wouldn't bet on them at this point. So, yeah, I think top four is gone. I think it's a real failure given the money that they spent. I think everybody looked at the team they assembled at the start of the season and thought they'll be in there. You know, you would have had them ahead of Tottenham, ahead of Arsenal, the quality and caliber of player they signed, the money they spent, the wages. I think it's a bit of a disaster for United. The only sort of morsel of hope I can offer them is having watched an Arsenal side be out of Europe this season, out of the Champions League, to an extent that's enabled them to focus on the Premier League and I think mount the push for fourth that they have. So maybe a season clear of the distraction of the Champions League might ultimately be a good thing for United's future. But for a club of that standing, it's a real failure to not be there. And it looks like they won't be at this stage.
Now, Arsenal benefited from not having any Europe this season with Arteta and also exiting domestic cup competitions at the earlier stage as well, has allowed Arteta to fully focus on training week in, week out on his players. He complains when they have 2 matches in a week. But Andy, what about Bruno Fernandes and his form? Because I think it's starting to really frustrate the Manchester United faithful. They seem to be annoyed at the remonstrating that he gives, constant possession loss, although I understand that he is a dangerous player in the sense that he can create chances, but the way he plays and creates those chances, there's also a possibility of him losing the ball.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I think the first thing you mentioned, that sort of the frustrations he shows on the pitch, it's just not a great sign, especially when you're in a team that's struggling and sort of losing. I mean, if you look at the Burnley team who are, in a bad position and, you see the way that they interact on the pitch, and it's very much, especially in the last 3 games, it's very much encouragement. And if someone does something wrong, it's like, don't worry about it, carry on. And they don't sort of, whereas you watch Fernandes, and he's not the only one in the Man United team who are visibly very frustrated and annoyed and like to have a go at the referee and stuff like that. I think it's one of them with Fernandes is that you have to sort of accept the possession loss because that is just part of his game. And he came into Manchester United and was, played at an unbelievable level and hit unbelievable numbers for a long, a decent length of time. That was never going to be sustainable, I think, and it was always going to be a certain drop off. And I think that is the problem, is that when you aren't, hitting the high standards that you set yourself initially, there's going to be more frustration. And when you are one of the guys that fans look to, a penalty miss doesn't help, especially when you've sort of got a Ronaldo on the pitch as well. It's never gonna go down well. And I think it's a general frustration with the team, I think. But then you start looking at individuals and how they're acting, and the ones you would expect or you would hope to be the galvanizer, be the one who goes and grabs a game by the scruff of the neck and goes and wins it for the team. And Fernandes hasn't been able to do that this season as much as he has in previous campaigns.
Yeah, it's amazing to think. Some fans have been complaining about Ronaldo hindering the team, but he's the only one scoring goals. A lot of fans complaining about Harry Maguire. He didn't start the last game, and they still lost. So many question marks there. But I'm going to come back to the original one here for you, James, very quickly. Is this the lowest point for Manchester United this season since Sir Alex retired? Because think of the 9-0 aggregate loss against Liverpool. 9-0. Think about the defeats to Manchester City. The Watford game. The interim manager, which hasn't worked out. So many question marks here.
I mean, it's difficult to say. There have been several low points. You think of, David Moyes going in and the trouble that he had initially. United really slumped away from being title winners under Ferguson. I think when Jose Mourinho left the club, quite a toxic environment at that time in the dressing room and in the stands. People were really unhappy with the performances. This would rank up there or down there, though, depending on how you look at it. It's been a really miserable campaign for United. And, one can only hope, if you're a United fan, that Ralph Rangnick, the time that he's been there, okay, the results on the pitch haven't been at the level that United would have hoped for. But has he seen what's required behind the scenes to turn this club around? And the appointment of Erik ten Hag, I think, is going to, give some hope to people. They'll be really excited to see the impact he can make. Was this kind of a necessary period for Rangnick to look at everything, the mechanics of the club, the infrastructure, and try and turn the ship around? He says it doesn't have to take years. He thinks it can be done in a year or two. Well, let's find out. I mean, it's a big old ship to turn around, and it's a huge task. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see what we get from them this summer in the transfer market and what sort of team they're able to put out next season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, their opponents in midweek will be Chelsea. Not really sure what to make of their season, Andy, because they went big on Lukaku. And every pundit I had at the start of the season, when we talked about Chelsea, said this was the missing piece in the jigsaw for Chelsea. They were they still are the European champions. And to mount a proper title challenge, they needed Lukaku. Look what he did at Inter. He's done it before in the Premier League. But now, here we are, many months later. I mean, yes, they reached the League Cup final. They also have an FA Cup final to come. And you would think they've got third place locked down. I mean, Arsenal are 5 points behind, but Chelsea also have a game in hand. And obviously with the off-field issues happening, Rudiger's confirmed to leave, Christensen expected to leave. It feels like it's a bit of a downer this season for me, Andy, for Chelsea, for the Blues.
Yeah, it has been a strange one. I mean, for so many different reasons. Obviously, the off-field stuff has put a completely different spin on it as well. But even on the pitch, I mean, you go from European champions to, not winning a trophy this season.
They have the FA Cup. They still have that, yes.
Well, yes, that's true, sorry. Possibly not winning a trophy this season. So it is going to... And when you are seen as... When you spend big and then you are expected to be one of the title challengers, to not be up there or at least, still in with a chance, with Man City and Liverpool, which was always going to be tricky because City and Liverpool are just so relentless. But there was an expectation that Chelsea would perhaps be closer. I think injuries haven't helped at certain times. I mean, Ben Chilwell and Reece James, the two wing backs who have been so crucial, haven't been, there regularly this season. Obviously, Chilwell's still injured. So there's just been loads of different things that just haven't quite gone right, that they sort of needed to go right to be able to sustain sort of that title challenge. I mean, equally, on another day, we could be sitting here and they could still be, they could be preparing for the Champions League semi-final this week because they did all they needed to do really in Madrid, and then just sort of, Madrid and Karim Benzema's quality just sort of outdid them in the end. And as you say, they've still got the FA Cup, so there is a chance of, at least some sort of celebration at the end of the season. I mean, from a Burnley perspective, I just want them to keep winning so they beat Everton. That'll do me. But yeah, so it's a weird one to assess because it's not like they've struggled in terms of they're currently in the top four fight. They, as you say, they should be clear of that now, and they've cemented their Champions League place for next season. But you just sort of think what might have been, and if Lukaku had worked, or should they have done that, or should they have looked to do something else? Was there a better suited fit that they maybe could have explored, which may have helped them? So yeah, it's a weird one to assess, and you sort of, I mean, with the FA Cup still to play for, you would expect that players are going to want to get into that starting 11 for that game, and therefore there's going to be that competition, and players are going to want to play well to prove that they deserve to be in that team. But yeah, when you look at it, when you take that step back, it is a bit of a strange season, just all round for them on and off the pitch.
Pretty succinctly there, what could have been, because we're saying that perhaps it's a bit of a failure this season given the money they've spent, but if you've reached 2 cup finals, you might still win one, and you've secured almost secured third place in the Premier League. I think Spurs fans, Gunners fans, and probably even Manchester United fans would snap your hand off for that kind of season. But this is Chelsea, of course, we're talking about as European champions, so perhaps it just doesn't do. Anyway, we need a prediction. James, what do you think for the match?
I think Chelsea picked up a big result against West Ham. I think they needed that, and they needed the clean sheet after a lot of defensive errors. I think that puts them in good stead against United, and I'm going to back Chelsea.
I think all three of us will be enjoying this game, sitting at home, not having to cover it. None of our teams involved here, and for me, it will all be 2:45 a.m. Andy, yourself, prediction?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with James. I think Chelsea will win. I think it's one of them. It could be mad. It could be like 3-3, because it's one of them fixtures that just could be really unpredictable. And but yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 to Chelsea.
I think I was at the reverse game where Michael Carrick was in charge at Stamford Bridge as well. Just flashed in my head. Let's just hope for an entertaining game, at least for the Malaysians. Remember, this match is kicking off at almost 3 a.m. in the morning. Okay, almost. So it better be worth staying up for.